Well, I think we're good to go. Hello, everyone. I'm Chris Butler, Chair of ICMP. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the latest webinar in our digital series. Even with the gradual emergence from lockdowns various, I think it's our intention to be continuing with these events for several months to come yet. So thanks very much for your continued support and attendance. We're never short of topics. And today's subject, music, data and systems, really goes to the heart of what it takes for us to operate successfully and efficiently in today's music marketplace. So to tell you more, I'm very pleased to hand over to our DG, Johnny Phelan, to make some introductions. Enjoy the webinar. Thanks.
Thanks very much indeed, Chris, and thanks for your welcome on behalf of the ICMP board. From myself and all of the ICMP team, a very warm welcome to all of our attendees today to this episode of the ICMP digital series. We're now topping more than 1,200 attendees to this series, so we're delighted to see such healthy numbers. It's also great to see a really international audience. I'm just looking down to the list and I see member companies and MPAs and guests from across the US, Europe, Brazil and South Africa. So a real welcome to everyone. We'd like nothing more than to see you in person, but in the meantime, hopefully this tech tool will provide a detailed group discussion on ICMP's work. Music publishers from Boston to Beijing, multinational or sole traders have some core missions all in common. First, they directly partner with and invest in songwriters and composers of every conceivable genre. Secondly, they promote and protect the resulting precious musical works. Third, they ensure songwriters get paid for their work, used by broadcast, digital, live, in print, on film, physical sales, whatever way the work is used, it's a publisher's job to ensure they get paid. Our member companies spend their daily professional lives working to ensure the use of creators' work results in payments by those music users to creators. In today's global market of over 100 million musical works across approximately 800 digital service providers, and millions of broadcasters and billions of music users, that work is large and complex. In our previous digital series, we've heard from expert colleagues across our industry about our daily task of addressing the biggest challenges. For example, making the digital licensing environment of the world's largest platforms more fair, ensuring AI remains an exciting opportunity, not a threat, and tackling piracy. Today, we're going to discuss a crucial pillar of the work, music, data, and systems. I'm delighted to be joining and welcoming another very select group of experts who we work with on these issues. First, we have Susan Butler. There are a few things that Susan hasn't mastered. Journalist, jurist, her career in the entertainment business is a storied one. She's sought after as an interviewer of US government officials as much as she is a respected analyst hired by institutions such as the World Intellectual Property Organization. She publishes Music Confidential, as I'm sure everyone here today knows. And when she calls ICMP, her questions can range from copyright reform in the Philippines to AOD streaming licensing in Latin America. Sometimes we work at a trade body ourselves. She moderates discussions superbly, which is why she's here today. And we're delighted to be joined by you, Susan. Thank you very much and welcome.
Thanks. Nice to see everybody.
We also have Rob Wells, Chief Executive Officer of Orfium. Rob has had an outstanding career formerly at BMG and Universal Music Group before focusing his considerable know-how on establishing Orfium. His base mission is to identify music usage and ensure creators are paid as swiftly and as efficiently as possible. It's an example of the increasingly dynamic copyright management market, and our members will be keen to hear more from you today. A warm welcome to you, Rob. Richard Constant, introduction not needed, done regardless. Current Orfium Chairman, former General Counsel at UMG for more than 3 decades, Board Director at the UK MCPS, and a UK Government Trade Advisor. And for those of you who've worked with him over the years, there are a few things he doesn't know about the music business. So we're keen for your insight today, Richard. Welcome to you. I mentioned MCPS in passing, which of course is run by the Chief Exec of our UK trade body, Paul Clements. I just want to take a moment and the opportunity publicly to say a real get well soon to Paul. We're really looking forward to having you back here whenever you're 100%, Paul. Joining us today also is Mark Isherwood, head of DDEX, the world's leading standard setting organization whose work focuses on standardization of data across the digital value chain. I always think that wherever you meet Mark, and no matter what the topic, you're always coming away having learned a lot. So no better man for today's talk. Welcome, Mark.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
And we also have Niclass Björlund. Niclass is Chief Exec at indie publisher Edition Björlund. He's director at our Swedish National Trade Group. He's ICMP Global Board member, of course, and Niclass is a member of the Strategic Board at Regional Hub ICE. Niclass is every bit a data expert as much as he is a music expert, so it's always good to see you, Niclass, and welcome today.
Thank you, John. Hello, everybody.
So, with that, I'm going to take the comfiest seat, the back seat, and I'm going to pass over to yourself, Susan, to kick off today's discussion. Thanks, everyone, and we encourage you to keep your microphones on for a lively discussion. Questions are possible for all the attendees in the bottom center of your Zoom. Ask your questions there. We will unmute you if we can. Over to you, Susan.
Great. Thanks, Johnny, and thanks, Chris. Hi, everybody. I'm glad that you're here today. I'm going to just take a couple minutes and go over a few things. Hopefully, it will help you follow more easily because I'm sure that there is a range of experience in the people listening in today and participating. So very briefly, DDEX, Mark Isherwood from DDEX, pronounced DDEX. It's the Digital Data Exchange. And when people talk about standards, think about being able to take an electrical appliance and plugging it into a plug in any home or office or anywhere you go. That's because the industry that makes all those devices and electrical currents follows standards to make things work together. DDEX focuses on messaging. And that means that when you are sharing information between publisher to record label to digital music service or DSP or collecting society, that's a message going back and forth. And their standards are basically around what types of information is shared when you are trying to accomplish a certain goal and what terms are agreed upon. So everybody's using the words that mean the same thing. Very brief generalization. ICE sometimes is confused in the industry because it really has kind of three separate parts going on. ICE is the International Copyright Enterprise. It is formed originally by three societies, PRS for music in the UK, STIM in Sweden, GEMA in Germany, and they have developed kind of three different areas. So there is the back office of ICE, which handles a lot of the administration and day-to-day things. The front office is the part of ICE that licenses, that is forward-facing to licensees like DSPs and others. And then in development is ICE Cube, which is the system that they're developing in the cloud to kind of make all these things work. So when you talk about ICE, sometimes people mix them all together, but there's ICE the front office, ICE the back office, ICE Cube. Orfium, just to make sure everyone understands, is not some subsidiary of a record company or a publisher or a society. It's an independent commercial corporation. Just a few terms to keep in mind if the word supply chain comes up. It's customarily referred to that chain from the creation of music and information gets passed along to record companies, distributors, DSPs, and others, societies. It's just the chain that supplies the digital files as well as information. People sometimes confuse and don't understand what data or metadata is. They're technically different, but sometimes they're used interchangeably. So what today, if you hear data or metadata, it's just all the information. Songwriter titles, their song titles, songwriter names. It's the information that goes along with them. It's the necessary information to make sure people, the correct rights holders, get paid. And there's also necessary information if we want to have wonderful things like read the lyrics, being able to ask a voice assistant for a specific song. That information's all important. Identifiers are unique numbers so that people who have the same name, like Chris Butler has the name Butler, I have the name Butler, we would have unique identifiers to distinguish ourselves. Matching is a process that is so incredibly important we're going into today. It means that, for example, when there are 10,000 titles of a recording that has the word angel in it, and there might be 15,000 compositions with the name angel in it, It's being able to take that 1 of 10,000 recordings and match it with the correct composition of 15,000 and make sure those are linked together, as well as identifying the rights holders. These things are incredibly important to make sure the correct rights holders get paid, to make sure that as we move forward, these things can be done more quickly, which means that money can get to people more efficiently, that it's cost effective, that it doesn't cost more than the money that they're collecting. And again, to encourage innovation for consumers to want to engage with more music. And lastly, I may say something like in the weeds. So it means that these are the people, and I love to get into the weeds. If you're looking into something in detail and you really are looking closely at challenges, that means somebody's really getting into the weeds to figure out what's going on. So today, how we're going to start is going to kick it off with Orfium. They're going to tell you they have a number of products. They're generally focusing on 2 today, but they'll let you know briefly the rest of them as well. And so I'm going to kick it off and we're going to go through their slide presentation. And then as we go through it, other people will be jumping in at different times. We can pause it, get into those issues more specifically. So we have kind of a guideline. And of course, when you have questions along the way, we'll do our best to bring that in when we can. I'm going to try, because we have limited time, to keep it on topic as much as possible. So please don't get offended if you ask something about what's happening in Russia, for example, and it may not be completely relevant to today's topic. So I'm going to kick it off with Richard and Rob. And if we can start a little bit about what's happening with Orfium, and take it away. You're going to share your screen with everyone.
I am, yes. Thank you, Susan. Thank you, Johnny. Nice to meet the panelists. Good to meet the audience as well. I'm going to try and share my screen. Let me see if this works now.
Mark, you want to?
I'm having.
Susan, could I just sort of say just a couple of things by way of sort of partial introduction? And I'm sort of, I suppose, bigging up this this event, because there are 2 issues which confront the music publishing business today, the publishing community. The first is that you don't get paid enough, and the second is the data issue, or more specifically, the inability to upload data correctly, and the consequent inability to match usage with the copyright owners. And if you solve both those problems, you basically solved all the problems of the industry, all the ones that really matter. But the data problem is a huge one. We used to think it was just a YouTube one, but I'm sure you've all read about MLC and the fact that, yeah, hey presto, they've uncovered $450 million worth of unpaid mechanicals across a broad range of platforms.
That's the U.S. music mechanical licensing.
Yeah.
Collective.
And so I sort of say that because, you know, data is one of the 2 big issues, and if you can fix it, you know, we're off to the races. So sorry to jump in, and Rob.
No, please do. That's great. Go for it, Rob.
No problem. Yeah, so as Richard rightly points out, data is one of the biggest issues that currently faces the worldwide music industry. It's the reason why I am involved in the business that is Orfium. We are essentially, as Susan said at the top of the conversation, we're an independent organization. We love technology, we love big data, and solving issues related to big data, and we are embedded in and understand the copyright and music royalty space. My background, I did 20 years in major record companies. I worked with Richard at Universal Music Group. Our chief product officer at Orfium is also ex-Universal, a guy called Simon Watt. We are essentially headquarters in Los Angeles with a very big engineering team in Central Europe, in Athens, Greece. And what we do, we cut our teeth in the UGC space with detecting, claiming, and catalog management for a selection of our client base. We have developed turnkey copyright reconciliation services for platforms. That's a platform-focused product, which has been deployed for a couple of platforms to date. We process and normalize.
When you say platforms, just to make sure everyone's on board, what are you talking about? Digital service platforms or other?
Yes, digital service providers, and you know, predominantly the problems associated with the rights picture and the matching issues are amplified and accelerated on UGC platforms. There are problems obviously that exist on point-to-point services like Spotify and Apple Music, and as Richard pointed out, you know, that manifested in the recent payment to the MLC in the US of $450 odd million and change. But the UGC platforms are essentially 10x more complex because there's a back channel from the consumer onto the platform, and the consumer can upload videos that contain rights from music companies as well. We process reports, we normalize and standardize reports. We have a royalty processing and accounting platform that can pay all the way down to writer level, and matching product, which we're going to spend a bit more time on as well. And we have a full suite of collection technologies, which includes broadcast monitoring, a CRM platform for street level collections, et cetera, et cetera. But let's focus on the matching problem. Let me spend 30 seconds on exactly how complex this problem is on UGC platforms. So as I said a minute ago, you know, the main complication with UGC is that there is a path from consumers' mobile device or desktop up to a platform, and in any of those uploads, they can include recordings or compositions that belong to music rights owners. The single biggest platform of consumption at the moment is obviously YouTube. Orfium processes a file that comes off of YouTube at the end of every month called the master list, which contains every video on the platform that they know, that YouTube knows and recognizes has a recording in the video that has generated more than one play. That report they send out to their publishing community. The report can vary between 30 and 40 million lines of data every month. And YouTube asks the publishing community to match their composition assets to that report. This process we do on behalf of a number of our clients, and we do it using a bunch of technologies, all predominantly baked in machine learning. We use a technology called token separation, and we take the master list and we take the asset database that has been provided by a client, and we match on a line-by-line basis. And there's a process of reconciliation when we first onboard, whether it's CWR data or any format that comes into our platform. We resolve all the conflicts and catalog information on a central platform that we have. We then match to the various sources that come in from the DSPs, and we resolve all the various of automated matching that is based around a confidence interval, which is set by a client. So if, for example, there's an 85% chance that the match is accurate, that could potentially provide a 1 in 5,000 possibility of a false positive, invariably that will be approved depending on what the client wants to approve. But there is also a process of manual matching as well. There'll be a list of high value videos that will need to be manually matched. And the process looks like that. That's the flow chart. So catalog comes in, it goes into the central, our music rights cloud. Everything is cloud-based. There's a querying mechanism and cleanup work that goes on internally. We then take the file, we do pre-processing on the file. It gets thrown into the querying mechanism as a list of proposed matches. Our software is engineered especially to match the files that will throw off the most money more quickly. So for example, if you're dealing with a UGC platform, there is varying degrees of value that can be released from early matches. It goes into the machine learning algorithm. Automated matches are loaded into a file. There's a human validation process, and every keystroke in the human validation process is used to retrain the algorithm, because it is a machine learning algorithm. And then the finished file is then uploaded back to the DSP, and the matches are associated. In some instances, by matching, you can release back pay on these platforms. And obviously, once a match is made, the match then needs to be monitored across a period of time to ensure that it doesn't degrade. And these platforms are extremely complex. There are multiple parties that touch these platforms, from co-publishers, sub-publishers, performing rights societies, other CMOs. The platform themselves can add a level of inaccuracy. So this has to be a constant process. And I guess that's kind of, in a nutshell, what the matching problem is and what we have done to architect a solution. The solution is deployed. It's live, has been live for 1.5 years, 2 years. It's revealed or liberated a large volume of cache from multiple DSPs on behalf of our client base. And alongside this, we also have a number of other intelligent technologies for audio matching, some proprietary algorithms there for a wide array.
Rob, before we go into that, leave this on the screen if you would, so people can kind of absorb what you're about to say. And then let's go into, all of us, a few of the terms. So some of the things that jump up already that you've said, for people to understand, one is confidence level. Another is reconciliation, what that really means. Another is what it means to be high value videos. And the other, the importance of cloud-based. So let me kind of, maybe Mark, and of course, Niclass, Richard, jump in here to add your thoughts on what do all of these things mean? And you know, it sounds so simple, but we know it's not. Mark, you want to jump in on any of those, or?
Only to say really at this stage that the sort of machine learning environment is very much the way ahead for the whole industry. What Rob has talked about is a sort of conceptual approach to it that I know exists in other companies as well. And the point about the machine learning is as the name suggests, the computer is learning all the time. And so the idea is that through its learning, it gets better at matching works and sound recordings. And so gradually the confidence level that the match is right goes up. And that in turn improves the quality of the matching. Some of these systems will also have a similar sort of confidence level approach to the sources of the data that they have or that they receive. So they
meaning what?
Well, meaning that I don't know exactly where Orfium gets its data from, but let's imagine it receives a data feed about musical works from XYZ Copyright Society. But as the machine is doing the matching, it discovers that actually the quality of the data that it's got from XYZ Copyright Society isn't all that great. And so the machine learning will automatically downgrade the reliability it has on the data from that particular source. Some simple things are If you're looking at trying to match German works, then you're probably likely to place more value on data that you get from Gamer than data you get about German works from Jazzrack, and vice versa.
In Jazzrack in Japan, yeah.
Yeah, so those are the sorts of things that these sorts of technologies are able to do, and it is a much better quality output than the fuzzy matching that has existed for as long as I was, going way back in my career at MCPS in the 80s and 90s, where basically you were doing fuzzy text matching, and that was the limit of the ability to match things. What this technology is doing is taking, a whole different approach and raising the quality of and the confidence you can have in the matches that get created.
And what are you deal with, I should say DDEX is the only organization that has as members everyone in the supply chain, meaning members who are working together are publishers, although not enough, I can say not enough publishers are involved with DDEX, but publishers, record companies, collective rights societies for authors, music licensing companies for so-called neighboring rights, as well as digital music services and providers along the way. So working with all those people, what are some of the challenges that Orfium and others face to make sure that this gets cleaned up and happening?
Well, the main thing is, the communication piece of what Orfium is doing. Increasingly, certainly the major players use DDEX one way or one of the DDEX standards one way or another to communicate the data that they have. And that's not to say that Orfium or anybody else can't deal with proprietary formats as well and convert them into a format that either a standard format or into a format that they use within their own proprietary ecosystem. But increasingly, certainly the major music players around the world are using DDEX in one form or another to communicate the data, to move it from one place to the other. And sometimes people describe DDEX as a language, and it's more of a sort of language, more of a translator than a language. Is that, again, using letters of the alphabet, XYZ company has a certain data model that builds relationships between data elements in one way, and ABC has a data model that builds it in another way. If both of them map their data model to the DDEX data model, they can actually understand each other. Even if they use different terminology within their own systems, they can understand the information that one is sending to the other by translating into DDEX and then translating back into the receiver of the message. So,
right. So
those are the sorts of things that are going on and would sort of connect Orfium with some of their suppliers of data and presumably some of their clients as well. I don't know to what extent they're using the DDEX standards or to what extent they're actually relevant on a day-to-day basis, but that's where DDEX would fit in.
And so, Richard, when you said at the top of this discussion about metadata and matching is such a big problem, I mean, what are you seeing as the biggest problem, and why is that?
Yeah, I suppose to contextualize this a bit, what Orfium are doing is we're fixing the symptom, but not the cause. And the cause is the poor input of data, the quality in the process. And I think it's important that be borne in mind. I guess we're not going to be covering that too in this in this seminar, but I think it's important to bear that in mind, that this is a problem that starts with poor input of data. We can fix.
Yeah, just to reinforce Richard's point, it was always, back when I was in major labels, it was always the responsibility of data entry. That role fell within a junior role in an A&R department at a label. and I'm pretty certain that similar things still exists, both on the recordings and on the publishing side. The other thing that's compounding this internationally is the rate at which catalogs right now are changing hands, especially in the publishing space. And to answer Mark's question, yes, we embrace DDEX. We take feeds in DDEX in any format, CWR from publishers. So you know, we are format agnostic, and we've even developed a piece of technology to read cue sheets and transcribe cue sheets, because you know, and textual entry as well, because there was a publishing client who's a small one whose main source of metadata was still on in a filing cabinet. So you know, we take catalogs from any source. But yes, this problem is only getting worse. You know, because the data entry, and there are technologies that are looking to solve the data entry problem that are moving the data entry process into the studio, which I think is an extremely good idea. But you know, as Richard rightly says, we are curing symptoms, not the root cause of poor data.
When you talk about high value videos and human validation, what are you talking about? High value meaning it's a pop star? Are you talking about use? Are you talking about monetary? What's high value?
Yeah, so on a platform, for example, like YouTube, you know, there are some videos, and they wash in and out of popularity. There are some videos that will, in 1 month on a master list, will be generating significant money because it's de rigueur. There's a lot of re-uploads from other platforms like TikTok, and whether it was a Fleetwood Mac song or another song, you know, there may be a complication in the associated metadata around a very popular song on a UGC platform. That will be spat out, and you know, the volumes will be attributed through our systems, and we will know that it will be more lucrative to match the more valuable assets more quickly. So there's you know, most of what we do is done in a value order. You know, we have other technologies that do supplemental claiming on these platforms, and we go after, you know, we position ourselves not as an anti-piracy technology in that regard. We go after money, and the reason why, you know, the thing that drives us more than anything else, and I think Johnny touched on it in his introductory remarks, we are focused 100% on flowing revenue, liberating revenue, and flowing it through to the constituents, the songwriter and artist community, as fast and as transparently as possible. That's what drives us. And you know, in a post-COVID world, I think that should be what is more in focus now than ever before.
Yeah, and just very quickly, human validation. So what do you mean by that? Because I can't imagine, like in the old days, 20 years ago, where people are looking at making sure a human is making sure everything lines up. Like I've heard in the past, and not that long ago, 10, 12 years ago, from a society, oh, you might not be able to find all the information in there, but just ask me. I know what that true information is. So human validation, are you doing that for the billions of lines? What does that mean?
No, you do automated matching up to a certain confidence threshold. So you know, there may be two records may be able to be matched to a confidence threshold of, say, 95%. And then you'll set a confidence threshold of, say, okay, anything below 80% that you know may be a match, will load into a queue and we'll review it manually. But you know, most of the matches will be done, the valuable matches are done above a certain confidence threshold.
Great, let's move on, because then we can have Niclass jump in too. Let's move on to your others.
Yeah, so you know, matching is one element of what we do. You know, we have ultimately we've produced and architected a bunch of technologies, data-driven, cloud-based solutions for ingesting rights data, reconciling rights data. We have a product called the Music Rights Cloud, the MRC, that can take catalog information and reconcile catalog information. We can identify, manage, and collect revenue from licensees, whether that is a DSP, a broadcaster, bars and restaurants. We can monitor and match, as I've explained already, the music usage across a variety of platforms. And data sets can just be, we can match across multiple data sets. The obvious matching solution is for list of recordings, list of compositions and matching that. But there may be multiple compositions, multiple assets, multiple lists from various DSPs. We can match across multiple sources. And then we have a very high-end, brand new allocation and distribution platform on the back end. This is the sort of I know most technology companies, and it's important to note that we are a technology company at our heart. We have a very large engineering team and data science team based in Central Europe, and these flowcharts are very synonymous with technology company presentations. But essentially, the music copyright owners will provide us with information. The music users and licensees provide us with information. It gets sent into a central registration and reconciliation database. We take the usage logs and we process all the matching reports, the license fees, and the attribution of those monies to the various constituent rights owners. And then we have the back end system for distribution and allocation of royalties. Again, this is all elements of this have been field tested. It's all brand new. It's all cloud based. And I'm assuming you'll want me to leave this slide on the screen, Susan.
Yeah, please do. So Niclass, sure. Especially when they're talking back office and looking at these possible solutions. Of course, the other solutions are why would anyone want every single society to be building and rebuilding their own systems, which they have done for years, rather than joining together in a hub, which is what ICE is. So you're on the strategy committee for ICE, but then you're also, of course, an indie publisher. Tell me some of the good things and some of the challenges that you see of any kind of a hub.
Yeah, I mean, thanks for the presentation, Rob. It's really interesting. In the chat, it says I'm representing ICE. I'm not. I'm an indie publisher. So, but I help them on the strategy board. So, but
so you're in the know.
Sorry.
You're in the know.
Yes, I am. I was involved when the first legal song was released in 21 years ago in Europe. So I've been doing this digital thing for, 21 years. So yeah. I know a few things. It's really important that that we have these hubs. It's super important because you need them also to negotiate with the bigger players like YouTube or Facebook, because it's really hard to do it on a national basis. It must be the whole, as I see it, the whole community for licensing. So you make up as a bigger partner for them. What scares me is that most of them go after the bigger chunk of money on the bigger songs and find that most important, where actually the small indie world is 27% of the market. So it's 1/4 that's an indie publishing market, and far away from this high-tech knowledge. And how to reach them, I don't know, but I think it's a very important question to ask. How?
Well, you also had mentioned to me when we were chatting that sometimes the hubs are not fully recognizing how publishers are set up within a sub-publishing network, that there are in fact contracts.
No, exactly. And both the major world and the indie world, they're connected all over the world, and the indie world, of course, is together with separate partners in each country. And if I have a sub-publisher in Germany, I want them to do the work in Germany. But the hub I am on the strategic board of, have problems recognizing they want to go back to the, as the majors do, to their head office and clear the whatever question there is. So that's a big problem. I also think it's because this is a creative industry where writers in the studio say, if there are 3 of them, say you can have 50% of the song in Germany, but then we split it, in thirds for the rest of the world. And that, with all the exceptions and the little things that is happening in the creative or the business side of it, it has to be a task when you bring it to the globe.
Let me hold just a second, because I see some questions on saying, what hub are you talking about? So again, back to when I began, this is the ICE was formed by PRS for music in the UK, STIM in Sweden, GEMA in Germany, so that they could focus on digital, multinational digital licenses, as well as administering in one place, matching for DSPs. They also work with a number of societies, a number of publishers who have them handling processing all of the digital. Is that an accurate statement?
Yeah, it's close enough. ICE was an idea connecting all the societies in Scandinavia at first, but it didn't work out. So then STIM went to PRS and they started it together. So that's and then GEMA came on later. But now it's the hub for Northern Europe. Also Benelux is in ICE now. So, and it's very important that, because we see when you try to centralize things in the music copyright world, you get into trouble, because I think it's with the technology, it should be easier to be decentralized and having decisions on songs taken in each country rather than taking them in the central position. Because yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, because a lot of the, it's not that hard to collect, online money for a song with one writer. It's easy because it's the same all over the world. It's when you have old 60s Italian songs, or you have new songs with samples or what have you, where you actually change from different countries how it's claimed. And I think that's when you get around that, where you get when it's interesting, really interesting for indie publishers or smaller one-person publishers, it's a big chunk of the market. So, and that's a hard task to do. It's really, really tough. But I think to decentralize copyrights, I think it's more important than we actually think.
So Mark and Rob and Richard too, you've all worked in the areas where everybody was trying to do a global database in one place. And so there's always these discussions about centralized and decentralized and what it means. But, you've seen challenges. So jump in here. Give us your thoughts on.
Well, I can talk about the I struggle actually to get the words out sometimes because I've got so many scars as a result. The global repertoire database.
Yeah, I don't mean to focus on the past at all, but let's.
No. Well, I think, frankly, you'll struggle to find somebody who doesn't believe we still need whatever the GRD was supposed to provide, simply because of the duplication that exists all over the world. And the fact that as a result of that duplication, there are going to be conflicts about, what work we're talking about. And that causes a lot of problems. So I think, however, the concept of the way of doing it is much more akin to the machine learning approach that Rob's talked about, where rather than trying to sort of claim that you're stating there is a statement of truth about, you know, what a particular work is and what the splits are. It's all you can really say is that that's the best information I've got as things currently stand on the basis of the information I have available, which is you may have 10 different sources of data about a whole bunch of different musical works. You use machine learning to determine what is likely to be the most, the closest to the truth as we can get on the basis of that information. Then you may add an 11th source of data and the answer may change. So the idea that we can have, you know, an absolute truth about these sorts of things, given, as Rob mentioned, the amount of catalog transfer that goes on between publishers, I think that's a myth now. It's going to rely very heavily on machine learning and sources of data coming together rather than completely centralizing the whole thing.
And so, Rob, I think that kind of leads into my question earlier, so people understand when anyone talks about a cloud-based system, you know, the importance of that. Would you explain why having a cloud-based system is so important? What that means?
Yeah, I mean, it basically it does away with the centralization. It becomes this, you know, there's no reliance on single parties. Everything is managed in a fluid way.
So you're not
and you know, I agree with everything that Niclass has.
Not talking about everything being on a piece of machine. You're talking about it being able to be unlimited, basically, right?
Yeah, it's loose. It's there, and you know, there's multiple feeds into the platform. You know, from both repertoire owners and platforms and DSPs and broadcasters, and I agree with everything that Niclass said in regards to, you know, the independent sector. This isn't a problem that we're looking to solve for either, you know, major music publishers or large PROs. We're looking to solve this problem throughout the entire value chain. You know, there are markets on the planet with big problems when it comes to collections, and you know, the presentation goes on to explain how we've architected solutions for street level collections from licensees in markets. You know, and you know, there's a CRM platform, you know, where you can from an app-based product on a phone, an agent can knock on the door of a restaurant in Spain and, you know, show the restaurant owner that they are deficient in paying a license fee, collect money from the restaurant owner, all the way up to, you know, the matching technology we have, and all of these. This has to be cloud-based. It's a list of products that, you know, we talk about end-to-end solution. That's kind of what we are. That's what we've architected, and it's turnkey in that, you know, if there is a sophisticated society or publisher that is good at this, but they need a specific element, they might need help with a distribution technology or a matching technology, or, you know, some other element in the chain, then we can provide that. Or it's plug and play in that there is the entire thing from end to end, from collections, attributions to distributions, that we can drop into any market on the planet. So, you know, it's kind of, and it's built on modern technology, and it's cloud-based. And sorry, Susan, I interrupted you.
That's okay. You walked right into my question, where there are people who work in the weeds with all the data and metadata. So whenever they see anyone who says we have a turnkey system or ability, or we have an end-to-end solution because of the challenges. I mean, Mark, you work with these kinds of people who always say, wait a minute, is that even possible?
Well, yeah, I mean, my thing about this is that this industry has, in terms of operations, I'm not talking about the front end, in terms of operations, has so many moving parts. So much data has to be right at a particular time in a particular place, which frankly isn't. And it relies on a whole bunch of people working together. So if you want to get ISWC data, you need to have a connection with a certain type of organization, similarly with ISRC or with other identifiers. Then there's the issue of matching works to sound recordings. And as I said, that's being done in several different places around the world, which means there's going to be conflict. So I think the technologies that Rob and Richard are talking about will work fine in meeting this particular requirements of a particular client. But where DDEX is coming from is kind of looking a little bit more at the whole industry. And I think in that context, there's all of these different moving parts have actually got to fit together in order to create the environment that we want. There was a question here, which you...
yeah, I'm not seeing a lot of questions, so jump in on any.
Well, there's a question here from Evan who talks about what we now call Session, which is a company which Björlund Vers and Max Martin have invested in. So what Session is doing, and what a lot of other companies are now doing, is creating platforms primarily for creators, be they artists or composers, to use in the studio. And when I say studio, that means a computer in somebody's bedroom, to collect the metadata as early as possible in the process of creation. Now, clearly that's not going to deal with all the billions of works that have already been created, but it is a mechanism for ensuring that record companies, publishers, CMOs get access to this data as early as humanly possible. And all of those platforms, so Session is one, another one is called Sound Credit, another is Viva Sound, and there are several others. And they're all basically, in slightly different ways, trying to help creators collect this metadata at source. And one thing that they all have in common is that the data that they're collecting is in a standard format, which was published by DDEX, called the Recording Information Notification Standard. And the standard is intended to be able to move between all of these different platforms as the process of creation goes on, because it's not a linear process, as we know, certainly not now, and certainly not in the COVID world. There could be parallel processes going on, the backing groups being put together, the drum tracks being laid down, and so on and so forth. And so collecting all that data is what the RIN standard is aimed at helping, and is part of these different platforms that I've mentioned.
So Johnny, are you seeing any questions? I'm not seeing any questions, and I want to be able to give Rob, a minute or so to kind of wrap up the rest of the slides as a summary. Are you seeing any other questions?
Yeah, we'll come through at the end. Susan, actually, Mark just tackled the one there from Evan. Thanks. So we'll just pass back to you and Rob, and we can come back for more at the end. So people can submit them center bottom of your screen. Just type in your question there. We'll try and unmute you if you do have a question.
Thanks, great. Rob, do you want to go?
Sorry, Susan, sorry to interrupt. Just jump in. It's about Evan's question, and it leads into what Rob is going to say. Is that, again, it's important to put this into context. It's a very good question, because we've spent this time explaining that, the fixing of the symptom, the cause is data input. And that's exactly what Björn's company and others are trying to do. It's also something that Orfium is trying to do, which is something that Rob was going to talk about, but we're probably
we can jump in. We can do that now. Do you want to jump in, Rob, and finish that up? So
I too have scars, Mark, long scars, but not so much on the GRD, but the SDMI was something that I was quite close to. And we've spoken to the guys at Session, and it is a really it's a really cracking idea to correct the data entry issues. The problem with standards is that you know that you have, it's all about adoption, and there are many constituent parts in the global music industry, as we are all well aware. And a lot of these initiatives over the years have failed because of various factions having their own thing to do, and you know, and pushing their own agendas. I don't know if the music industry is in a place where they will, you know, there is an understanding that a wholesale adoption of a practice is now necessary. Personally, I think it's about time.
Rob, tell us about yours. Rob, tell us about yours.
Yeah. So I mean, I have this deck of slides. It's very comprehensive. It goes through all the various products that we're architecting to solve each one of these problems. And you know, there is standardization throughout, and data entry is one of the solutions that we are looking to try and crack. Obviously, we're very short of time, so I won't, you know, but if members of the audience are interested, then you know, this presentation will be with Johnny after this call. And I think, you know, the thing to just to wrap 3 seconds on this, you know, it's kind of why us? Well, you know, to reiterate the point we made at the very top of this conversation, that we are an independent organization. We're not owned by any other constituents inside the music industry. We are flexible. We offer solutions, both you know, high level solutions and grassroots solutions, economically viable, and you know, we believe we're best in class for this. So you know, that's it from me.
Do we, Johnny, do we have another minute for him to finish up a little more on that?
Sure, by all means. Yeah, all good for me.
Rob, go ahead. Talk a little bit more about that. If you want to take a couple more minutes, please do.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I kind of we go into depth on this on the presentation concerning all the various products we have, from media library products to the Music Rights Cloud, which I've touched on, a documentation app. We have there's a client portal app. There's the CRM and field agent app, which I touched on as well. We have ERP integrations for existing finance products, a usage log. But you know, the data entry process is obviously critical, as we've discussed at length. You know, we tidy a lot of information for our client base. We can consolidate and reconcile the rights picture across all of our publishing clients and our PRO clients as well. So, you know, I think it's kind of, we have this, we are young, it's an early stage, you know, we are an early stage venture, but, you know, to make the point again, we are a technology company, and we are flexible and fluid. So, you know, if there is a problem that does pop up, then we have the architecture and the engineering resource to fix these problems as well. So.
Someone was asking if the PowerPoint was going to be available, and you just said that ICMP would have it. So, Johnny, is it possible? I know it's difficult for any company that's, you know, working and developing systems at 1,000,000 miles an hour to be able to answer every single question. But if somebody who's on here looks at that PowerPoint presentation and has some questions, could they send them to ICMP and you could get them in a bucket and just kind of, you know, if Orfium has time to answer some later? Is that possible, or is that kind of?
No, sure, of course. Two things are going to happen after this. We'll circulate a recording of this webinar, and secondly, we can circulate the presentation. Speaking of hubs, that's exactly what ICMP is in a way. So any questions, fire them our way to Secretariat and we'll sort that out as needed. Yeah. We have a couple of questions as well too. So we'll try and unmute the questioners. We'll just looking down here through the list. We have one from Emmanuel Constant. Emmanuel, I'm just going to see if we can ask you to ask this live. Can you hear us, Emmanuel? Do you want to try and ask your question?
Hello?
We hear you.
Oh, hi. Oh, I just wanted to ask, will DDEX will DDEX adopt the blockchain technology, specifically NFT, as a form of solution to address some of these issues that you guys have with the data?
At the moment, DDEX has not adopted anything to do with blockchain and has no plans to do so. There isn't, I mean, blockchain has, you know, it still has a bit of a bad name amongst people who are involved in these data issues, because it was touted as a solution to everything, including world peace. And I'm afraid it isn't. It's just a technology like any other. There may well be applications and functionality that it can fulfill that are relevant to the music industry. But frankly, in what DDEX does, we haven't found one yet, and nobody has suggested that we go looking.
The reason why I asked, because specifically, the NFT technology under blockchain is pretty much a tool that probably would be able to aid with your royalty your royalty issues, and with your ability to distribute in the mass as well. As like that's the reason why I asked. I understand that in the past blockchain had a reputation of what it is, but between last year and the beginning of this year, it's been widely adopted. There's a lot of companies that are looking at it as a tool in order to be able to use to address some of the issues that we have today. And that's the reason why I asked, and that's another reason why I wanted to I asked for the PDF as well, because I wanted to be able to figure out how best to use the NFT technology to be able to account for new ways to generate being able to aid royalties, and as well as be able to have a uniqueness within the digital space.
I think, can I jump in just for a second? Because when we get into blockchain, that's like a whole other webinar.
Yeah. We're also keen just to, sorry,
So my question, I was just asking. I didn't want to take.
All good. No, good question, and I think we've got a clear answer. So thanks very much, Emmanuel. Just pass. We're going to take 2 more questions, and if we could try.
Not a surprising one from Scott.
Okay, here we go. Scott, can you hear us? Can you try and ask your question?
Thanks, guys. No, not an unsurprising one from me. Sorry. It goes back to the analogy of the plugs, the electrical plugs. Since we don't have a single source authoritative link between recordings and works, and what's happening is that lots of companies are building a value through the matches they're making, building systems, investing time and resources in creating these matches. They're then unwilling or reluctant to share that information. So we're creating different sets of links and they're not being put together. So we're creating a whole new set of issues for ourselves around the data, in duplicate claims, in gaps, and just in general lack of understanding. So aside from the core copyright information that's in flux and moving very quickly, blockchain is immutable, so it's not very useful for moving data. We're creating ourselves additional problems by not sharing those links. Don't know if the panelists had any comments.
Well, I couldn't agree more. This is an absolutely fundamental issue to me, and it's madness that there are probably 150 different versions of catalogues of works matched with sound recordings. And I'm afraid it's vested interests in the industry, which is holding back trying to come up with an authoritative version that that everybody can use. Links of that nature should be a public utility that the industry can use, and it puts a massive amount of cost on all of the rights owners one way or another, whether it's being done by CMOs or it's being done by yourself.
And
the cost globally is huge, and it's insane that there isn't a move to come up with a utility for, I say central with the inverted commas, service to link sound recordings to musical works.
And sometimes, isn't it that someone invests the money because it is expensive to do, and they sometimes think, I invested the money and therefore it's mine, when in fact that just harms the industry as a whole, I think most people think.
Yeah, sure, because it's being done in every territory in the world, probably more than once. And, you know, for publishers, that's coming off your bottom line, basically, because all of the CMOs have, and other companies as well, have these links. And it's just a massive cost that frankly shouldn't be there. If a Martian came down and said, this is the way you run the industry, the first thing they would say is, well, you need to have an authoritative database of links between musical works and sound recordings.
Yeah, that's also, I mean, ICE is an attempt to at least have the Northern Europe have the same database, but it's working good, but it's not perfect. And I think that's why I'm thinking about decentralizing. And then it's, I mean, I don't know. I mean, if it's happening, actually speaking directly against you, but I still agree with you. You know, it has to be all the little details, all the little exceptions. That's the hard part to crack, I think.
Oh, sure. I mean, I'm not saying you can whistle one up in a couple of months, but the will needs to be there across the industry to make it happen.
Yeah, and agree.
Yeah.
That gets back to the standards, and there can be adoption where people say, yes, I agree that this is the way we're going to all define words and share information. And it's a whole other thing to get a company to say, we're going to use it as that, instead of making all their own changes or not using it. That implementation is such a huge challenge. You want to just knock everybody's heads together and say, start using this.
Absolutely. No, Mark, you called DDEX almost a translator for the industry, but this is the basic language, is the basic standard unique identifiers. And we're going to, this is all good stuff, but we need to move fast. So we're going to take one last question, if we may. We have a question here from Leah Gevart. Leah, can you ask your question live?
Sure.
Good
Thank
stuff.
you. Let me just put this down here. I think it's a wonderful idea, but there were many to get the information in the studios. But having experience doing label copy and working with very early information, a lot of the times, a lot of writers did not have any publishing set up or have a clue about publishing, or they haven't signed their publishing deal yet. So for the system, could there be placeholders for information to be determined later and a reminder for anything that is outstanding? Just a reminder back to the company. I mean, I think the thing is it's great to try to gather the information at the studio, but a lot of times it was just the chicken before the egg? And I had database and label copy deadlines to meet. So at a certain point, you just would have to put something like copyright control in for a holder so that the release could go out. Although you had permission to do the release, the information just wasn't settled yet. The publishing name wasn't there. So there would always have to be a space for information to flow in later on. Would the system allow that, and how would you deal with that?
And I want to just add to her question, because for years, that's a question related to the ISWC, and why can't there be a placeholder to fill in later? I think that's a huge question that still hasn't been answered well.
Mm-hmm.
Well, within the RIN standard that these various, the sessions of this world are using, there is a field for ISWC if it exists. Of course, in the studio, it very rarely exists if it's a new work. But one of the things that Session and some of these other companies are doing is they're linking their platforms with the ISWC database, with the ISNI database, which is the International Standard Name Identifier, which is a unique number for performers, artists, anybody. I mean, it's not just music; it's all of the creative art. And getting those numbers assigned, or if there is an assignment already, getting that number brought into the file relating to that particular creation. So a lot of these these connections, these data links are starting to be made through these systems, and it's not there yet. And with particular reference to splits, obviously I agree that a lot of splits are not agreed in the studio, they're agreed sometime later. But the point about these is creating breadcrumbs of information that people can follow in order to fill in those gaps later on.
And Rob, I assume that your system has the flexibility that can basically, and that was the problem in the past. Some of these systems were not set up that you could change anything easily. But since you're in the cloud,
yeah,
you've got this, you can actually make changes more easily and therefore have placeholders, right? Rob, in your system? Oh, you're on.
Yeah, correct. I mean, we have yes, absolutely. Oh, sorry. Full flexibility, contributors to works that, you know, that may be allocated further down the chain. This is obviously a big problem, the fact that, you know, certain contributions are not always agreed when a work is released.
Exactly.
But yes, there is. That is built into the Orfium platform. So if someone is a contributor on a track, they can come in and add that at a later date. Yes.
And that's new. I mean, that's relatively new, and thank goodness they're finally getting around to everybody being able to do that on the newer systems, I think, because, you know, we don't all make decisions at the same time.
If I may just say, one interesting point in that regard is with the Music Modernisation Act. One of the pillars secured, and that's driven by the NMPA, is of course the MLC. And one of the striking features of the MLC is the fact that it's a public portal and it's transparent. You can go in, you can search the database, you can search the splits, you can search the apportioned works, and you can update those as things go on. So I think this comes back to what Mark was saying earlier about the future is, you know, competing sources of credible data. It's not about one database being to rule them all, but rather having good, transparent, high quality data which can be updated and input and the gaps filled. Like anyone who's had a walk around YouTube and Content ID, 2.1 billion monthly users, knows that frankly the data gap is the biggest commercial issue perhaps facing the global music industry. And so it behoves all of us to get good data into the system, get good credible sources of administration of the system. And I think what Rob and Richard and Mark and Niclass are all doing in that regard, tremendously interesting. If that can marry and match up with the MLC and what Europe is already doing now with Article 17, with the obligations on DSPs to be transparent back to all rights holders, these are really good harbingers of a healthy future of the music industry, which can be more fair for everyone. That's the hope, that's the daily work. We are over time. We've had a fantastic panel today. I really want to extend a warm thanks to Susan Butler for, as ever, an expert panel, Mark Isherwood from DDEX, Richard and Rob from Orfium, Niclass from many hats, but primarily Edison Björlund, and of course, Chris Butler from our boardroom. Thanks to everyone for joining, a great one. We look forward to seeing you at the next editions, and bye for now.